You're ready. We're ready. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome. This week, we're going to be addressing a question that came up during the last week. And the concise basis of that question is, how do we find motivation? And how do we remotivate if we've lost it? You know, what moves us to get into action to do what we need to do to meet our goals?
There's a couple of ways to use this. One is maybe you've got a person in your team that is sort of wondering and could use some support in finding their way. And also, maybe it's you, maybe it's yourself. Maybe you've been at this a while or you're just new, it doesn't matter. But you're not feeling it. You're not feeling the call, the urge. You're not feeling the sufficiency to go do what you know you've got to do. And one of the analogies I like to use is people would love to lose weight. There's very few people, if any, that don't know how to lose weight. So everybody knows how to lose weight. The question is, who's going to do what they need to do? And so this part that Christa's pointing at is an important piece, because again, whether you're new or you've been at it for a long time, or you've got people in your team that are new or have been at it a long time, the question becomes for all of us at some point, how do we re-catch on fire? How do we fall in love again? How do we re-stimulate ourselves to get going? Or in the case of a new engagement, how do we get that? How do we get that fever, that fire? How do we get going?
Yeah, so when this question came through during the week, I had a couple of quick answers, but I've actually been sitting with it. And I'd like to share what I've come up with. So all of us, as we go through our life, live through a myriad of interconnecting cycles. And this is really just one cycle, this whole motivation cycle. And if you're not feeling motivated, if you've kind of lost the fire, so to speak, or haven't quite found that urge yet, or whatever that is, I just want you to know it's not wrong. You know, you're not doing it wrong, because it's part of the cycle. Everything has an in-breath and an out-breath, just like the tide. And all of our cycles are the same. And so it is with this motivation cycle. And the crux of this motivation cycle, to me, lies in inspiration. We have to start with being inspired. And how do we do that, right? How do we get inspired? And it's kind of easy in a way, because it's about choosing. It's about choosing simply to open up to inspiration. And what I mean by that is we need to consciously give ourselves permission to be inspired. We have to allow ourselves to experience being filled with the breath of God, because that's what inspire means, is the breath of God. And it lives in us all the time. And sometimes we feel it so fully. And then other times, we breathe in and we breathe out. And so it's about us coming back to that place, because it's the inspiration that is going to fuel our motivation. And what I would suggest is, which is a really powerful thing, is to actually walk outside, not right now, but sometime, walk outside and speak that choice out loud. I choose to be inspired. I open myself to the experience of being filled with the breath of God. And then you need to follow that up by action. It doesn't just stop there. You have to go find it. And if you want a more practical next step, that is to sit down. So here's another exercise: to sit down with a big sheet of paper and a pen and spend some time writing down all of the places that you can find in yourself that seem to be stopping you from feeling inspired. What are these pieces that are getting in your way? And then once you've got as much as you can get, enlist the help of somebody else who is willing to spend some time with you and go through each of these and brainstorm. Both of you get together and brainstorm. How can I transform that? How can I change that belief? Or how can I move through that challenge, or whatever it is? And once you have some of these pieces, then you've got a roadmap of the steps that you can take to move yourself from where you're at right now.
So one of the things that Christa's talking about when she uses the word inspire, let's look at that, and let's look at the role of motivation in inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So inspire, if you look at when I look at the word, I see inspires, the spirit inside. So inspire, spirit in. And that, as Christa pointed out, is there all the time. Now the question becomes for me whether I can recognize it, or whether I'm listening for it, or whether I'm able to respond to it. And that's not always the case. If I'm stressed or anxious or in fear or lack or worry, that voice is not as loud sometimes. So here's where the role of the role of knowing where I'm at is so important. As Christa pointed out, it's a cycle. There's a cycle of prominence, and then receding, and then growth, and then so it moves like the tides in phases. And for me to know where I'm at is important, because if I'm just blindly or just unconsciously in the cycle and I don't know where I'm at, it's hard for me to do as Christa said, to sit down and create a roadmap, to actually put the support in place to consciously use this cycle. See, the cycle's happening anyway. The question becomes, how do I use it? How do I get the most power available in the cycle? And a big part of it is knowing where I'm at on the cycle. Mm-hmm. Then I can take specific positive action. And one of the actions that Christa talked about is of course, finding a support system and understanding what my blocks are. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the role of motivation in inspiration, because motivation by design, or by definition, it comes from outside. So a motivating personal speaker, a motivating book, a motivating circumstance is a way of being stimulated into inspiration through an external source. So I can be motivated. Now here's the challenge. I can be motivated by a great book or a great speaker or a great something, but unless it turns into inspiration, the motivations goes. It's transitory, it's here for a while, and then something else happens and I'm on to the next thing. Inspiration is very different. That's like a spring that bubbles up constantly from the inside. So the role of motivation can be to stimulate the inspiration, or to help trigger it, or to help nurture it, to help it manifest. So two things. One is know where you're at on this cycle. And as Christa said, there are exercises and things we can do to consciously bring into our reality, into our thoughts, the inspiration, the voice, the impetus. And the other thing that we can do is consciously cultivate a source of motivation that can help bring out the inspiration, help cultivate inspiration, to help bring that voice louder.
And it works both ways. You know, if we keep coming back to the inspiration, if we're able to find that place, connect with that experience inside of ourselves, that then fuels the motivation as well. So it kind of they work hand in hand. And then there's a third piece within this cycle. And, you know, cycles, there's always a time of rest in the cycle. And so when the motivation seems to be kind of faint, or the inspiration is just not quite connected to your consciousness at that point, then this is where we need commitment to persistence. So persistence follows motivation. There has to be a doing part of this. And that is where persistence comes in. So again, I would encourage you to cultivate persistence as a sacred energy, as an important part of this cycle.
A good example of that, I used the example earlier of losing weight. So everybody knows how to lose weight. You know, there's some common sense things, but it takes, as Chris was pointing out, persistence. It takes understanding where I am on the weight cycle, because we gain and lose weight. It takes knowledge, it takes understanding, but even more importantly, it takes consistent action. See, there's a beautiful thing called the law of attraction, and a lot of people became familiar with it through a popular movie called The Secret. However, the thing is that it's not just about attracting circumstances into our life, it's about us doing that and then taking the action to have those manifest into what we're after. And so what Christa's pointing out in part about the inspiration cycle and the motivation and bringing in this information and knowing where we're at is that it is, because it is a cycle, I have to develop certain character traits. And one of them is this persistence. Now, persistence and discipline, these may sound like really foreign or difficult or hard work. However, we're already persistent in our lives. Most of us brush our teeth occasionally. Most of us probably do it every day. I don't consider it fun or interesting. I consider it something I have to do. And I've developed a persistence. So it's not like I can't have persistence. It's a question of how important is it to me to have the result? So I don't want to focus on the persistence or the discipline or consistency. I want to focus on the result. And then the consistency and the persistence become easier and easier, because I want to avoid the pain of going to the dentist, or I want the pleasure of having healthy oral hygiene.
And it's during this persistence stage that we cycle back to finding the inspiration again. And so, you know, we're constantly, if we are committed to having what we say we want, we're constantly working with this cycle all the time. And one of the things that is a very practical piece of this, and Michael mentioned the law of attraction, is to have, alongside all of this that's going on, is to have really clearly defined goals for yourself. So we need, as clearly as possible, to know where we're going. And I mean, I am a great advocate of this law of attraction piece, because it involves having a really clear goal, and it involves keeping that clear goal in your consciousness all the time.
Yeah, and the shadow side or the dark side of not having clear goals is the law of attraction works either way. It's like gravity. If you drop something, it's going down.
Yeah.
Law of attraction works like we're attracting into our lives what's important to us, what we think either consciously or subconsciously. So here's the trick. If I don't have clear goals, if I'm not focused on what I want, consciously want, I'm attracting in all other stuff anyway, right? So I'm going to get the random thoughts or the fears or the avoidance. We're attracting things into our lives. So doesn't it make more sense to attract specifically what we want rather than all the stuff that perhaps we don't want or don't care about particularly? So that's part of the value of having goals, clear goals. And if you're not 100% sure how to do this, reach out to somebody who's your support team, your success team, and ask them again, as Christa said earlier about inspiration, is to ask them to go through with you what are important life goals for you, because it may take somebody else in your life to help clarify this. Very few of us have the tools or the self-analysis or the ability to really have a dialogue with ourselves about what are my goals. And if we're trying to do this alone and we're not having success, it is doable, but sometimes it just takes another person to work with to hit those important goals. And you might be surprised how fast and easy it comes working with somebody else to develop clear goals that will move you ahead in life to where you want to go.
Right. And actually, there's something I want to mention about goals, which ties back to the whole inspiration cycle. And that is, if you ask most people if they have free will, most people will say, yes, of course I have free will. But my question is, do you really? Especially when it comes to something like this, because most of us, I mean, it's a part of human conditioning to be conditioned by our past, right? We are conditioned by the experiences that we've had, by voices that have told us we should do certain things and be a certain way and maybe strive for certain things in our life, or, all of the myriad pieces that have made up our life to this point. And bottom line is, for almost all of us, we live a limited existence, right? We live within a certain parameter of limited possibility. So what if we were to open that curtain and to actually step beyond our conditioning that limits us? Because what that means is, again, cycling back to this inspiration piece, it means being willing, making a choice, conscious choice, being willing to say, I want to let all that go for now in terms of influencing me in my goals. And I want to experience, I am opening myself up to being filled with the mind of God, because we are, and it's the same thing as the breath of God, right? The mind of God has no limits, unlimited possibility. And we are that, we have that. We just have to be willing to recognize and give up. And sometimes that's really, really difficult, is giving up what's conditioned us to this point, because that's safe. We know it. It's a known thing. To break apart those shackles is to step into the unknown. And anything can happen. And that's the scary part for most of us, right? So again, conscious choice, take the risk, because the fact is, whatever choice we make, we are totally supported in that choice. The universe has our back here. We are totally supported no matter what choice we make.
So there's not a caveat, but a way to sort of frame what Christa just said, because for some of you, myself included, at times, what pops up immediately is, oh, I recognize this. So the power of the universe is mine. Everything I want and ask for, I can get. And that's scary. That's some scary stuff there. So let me just back off that. And it's safer not to believe that. It's safer not to deal with that. It's safer just to kind of go back to normal. I'm okay with normal. Now that's a normal reaction. That's a typical reaction. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, to have the full possibility of what Christa just pointed at manifest in our lives, what we're talking about is prosperity, abundance thinking, about unlimited wealth, about the ability to live to the fullest capacity. That's scary stuff. It is for me, it is probably for most of us. So I want to sort of put it in a framework that makes it more accessible, because when I get too big a thought or too powerful a thought, I get overwhelmed and I can retreat. I can retract back to what Christa pointed out, which is my past, which is safe and small, and nothing wrong with that. But I want to frame this in what I'm going to call gradualism, a way of holding all this infinite possibility in a manageable container so that I don't have to get overwhelmed by it, so that I can manage it, so that I can be more comfortable with it. I can be at peace with it. And so there's two pieces to this. The first is to find out what I'm scared of. So most of us are obviously scared of failure, but we're also, on some level, I would submit, most of us are afraid of our success. And what I mean by that is we're afraid of the immense power that we have as human beings, the immensity of what's possible. And for my brain, if I really think about it, it starts to shut down, because I can't hold that immensity and still find it credible and believe it and really believe it and know it's possible and then act on that. Okay, so I have to back down. I have to walk that back a little bit. And so I want to talk about the gradualism of containing that and managing it, working with it so it can open up more and more and more. And also to understand what that fear is that contracts it. So it's the fear which contracts it down to the past or down to normalcy or playing small. And then there's the gradualism of opening it up in a way that is manageable and allows us to live our life with comfort and dignity and not in the freak out zone. Okay, so this piece about the fear, let's start with that. So what is it that we're afraid of? What is this fear of living big or unlimited power? What is this fear, and how do we engage with it? How do we deal with the fear and the what if?
Mm-hmm. And this plays out in people's lives every day. And I mean, I know it for me, just a simple, I'm going to kind of bring it right back down to day-to-day thing here. Just a simple act of, okay, I have to make a phone call. I have to, I don't know, prospect this person or whatever it is. And the dread comes up, right? What if they reject me? What if they're angry? What if, whatever all of that is, it's there. And unless I'm willing to refocus my what if, then that's just going to compound itself, right? That dread is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm going to put off and put off and put off making that phone call. And it's so interesting to me that as humans, that's usually where we go, right? What if is always the worst scenario. It's crazy. It's just, that's the default. And yet, what if it was the most glorious scenario? How often do we go there, right? So we can reformulate our what if to something magnificent, to something wonderful. I know this, that every successful leader that I've met, including a lot of us, have learned invaluable lessons by confronting and meeting and overcoming these challenges. And it takes courage. It takes tremendous courage. And it takes commitment to the journey. And it takes being willing, consciously willing to open my eyes, open my heart to see what's really there. Because all that stuff is made up in my head.
Yeah, and here's the dramatic piece that may kind of cement this for you. I know it does for me. The law of attraction we spoke about earlier. You get what you think about. You get what you put out. You get what you want in the world. And so if I'm going to make this phone call, if I've got it scheduled or I've got something I've got to do or whatever it is in life, and I'm thinking the what if is, oh, this is going to be horrible. They're going to reject me. I'm going to feel bad or whatever. The law of attraction kicks in.
Uh-huh.
And so guess what the phone call looks like? Rejection and here's a way you can look in your life and know that this is true. You ever gotten up and think, wow, what a lousy day. You know, the weather's bad. I feel achy, blah, 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 blah. And then guess what? You have a bad day, right? And have you ever gotten up or shifted that and said, no, this is a great day. Look at this. It's the same weather, but it looks great. I mean, and then how does that day turn out? Turns out great. And I'm sure you've had circumstances in your life where things look really dire or bad or negative, and then you shifted your thinking, and that same set of circumstances had a different outcome. So that's what we're talking about. So the law of attraction is going to work. And so if I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be horrible or embarrassing or a bad call, there's a good chance that's what's going to manifest. So what Chris is talking about is actually choosing in that moment. And I just want to be a voice for having a support person or a support team when you feel that way.
Absolutely.
So if I'm feeling like, gosh, I got to make this call, but I can't wrap myself up and negative and this and that. You know what the smartest thing for me to do is turn to somebody and go, hey, look, I'm having trouble kind of getting it together for this call. Can you talk me through this for a moment? And so that person might go, well, what is it that's going on? What are you afraid of? What are you fearing? And I go, well, I'm afraid they're going to think this or that, or it's going to turn out like this. And they go, okay, you want to reframe that? You want to choose something else? What's the opposite of that? What's the direct opposite of it being a bad call? Well, it'd be a great call. And they're going to love what I have to say. And I'm going to feel good at the end. And it's going to turn out success. Okay, great. Choose that and then go make the call. See, so that's looking for some support. And guess what? You have it built in. It's called your success team. It's called the people around you who are invested in your success and willing to help you with that.
Yeah, see, we're the creators of our destiny. And that destiny and how that destiny plays out is shaped by how we think. And so we have to hold ourselves accountable. You know, that's the first step, is taking responsibility, holding ourselves accountable. Because if we don't hold ourselves accountable, we can't expect somebody else to hold us accountable. They've got their own accountability going on, right? So when I said earlier, it takes courage, it takes tremendous courage to be willing to do this, to be willing to walk this journey. It takes facing risk. It takes being willing to push through discomfort. It takes being willing to do the work, which is simply to be committed to what you really want. Be committed to the quality of your destiny. It's up to each and every one of us, nobody else. We can be there to support you. Absolutely, we can. But ultimately, it's our choice. Our choice. And when we are working in this business called network marketing, we're leaders. Each and every one of us are leaders. The moment we sign up one person, the moment we share this with one other human being, we are stepping into the role of leadership. And so it behooves us to be the best leader that we can be, because that ripple effect is going to impact every person we come in contact with. To be willing to commit to this place of inspiration, to be willing to be that place of inspiration for somebody else. That is the mark of a leader.
And so let's recap where we've gone and where we're coming to, and try to pull it together a little bit so that you have some actionable items, because there's a lot of background and a lot of important information. And yet, if it's just information, it's not going to materially affect your future or your present. So the important thing that we led off with was about inspiration, and how inspiration is the spirit within, and how we can compare and contrast that with motivation, which is external coming in, and how to cultivate that, how to actually invoke it and bring it into our lives and cultivate it, and then work with it in a conscious, specific way to have that inspiration be part of us, an important part of us, and allow that to guide us and keep us on track. And the role of having a support team or support person, a support system, a structure in place to keep that on track and to help us frame that, help us pull that into a manageable kind of a pattern or a series of circumstances where we consistently are able to apply this.
Because, when we're in that place, when we're in this place of inspiration, the whole world opens up. We talk about that with commitment. When we're committed, we see opportunity where we never saw it before. And it's the same with inspiration. When we are attuned to that experience within ourselves, inspiration's everywhere. All we have to do is walk out the door and look up at the sky. Walk out the door and listen to a bird sing. Watch a child play. It fills our heart. It's there. It fuels everything we do, and everything we see in a different way, because we're seeing with our heart as well as our eyes.
And because of this, what Christa's talking about and modeling, because of this being in the presence or being inspired, being from inspiration, then the law of attraction, guess what? That's what we get more of. We get more and more and more and more of that, and it becomes a virtuous spiral of expanding possibility, expanding success, expanding joy and satisfaction in life. So to instigate, to kick off that spiral and to maintain it and stay in it, there are pathways. There are known ways to do this. And we went through a couple of them about being aware of it, identifying where we're at in this cycle, and putting things in place to ensure that that maintains and expands, getting support people, support systems, doing it gradually, as opposed to just expecting we'll do it one and done and then my life will change. Well, it will, but not that way. So it's about persistence and about consistency. And it's about having people and systems to support us in staying in that and bringing us back to it when we get off the track or when we get into a funky place, to get back on with it. And to finding out, part of it is to finding out why we're afraid to have all the success and all the magnificence that life offers, and work with that in a specific way of consciously choosing to identify, okay, I've got this fear that this call or this thing's going to turn out a specific way, and getting the support, if we need it or do it ourselves, to actually choose the alternative, choose the powerful, choose the expansion, choose abundance, choose for success, and then let the law of attraction kick in and manifest that in our lives. Now, we're not saying that it is simple. We're not saying it's going to be just flicking on a switch and it's all over and done. It is a discipline. It's a journey, but it's a journey with heart. It's a journey with a lot of passion and power, because guess what? The more I do this, the easier it gets. And the easier it gets, the more it reinforces itself. And the more this virtuous cycle of success and abundance starts manifesting, the easier it is. And then becomes who I am. Mm-hmm. It becomes second nature.
Yeah. The destiny that we're all creating for ourselves. It's based on our habits, our daily habits. It's based on the philosophy that we're holding at any time. These are all really important pieces that play out in what's created in our life.
So hopefully we've given you some food for thought, but also some patterns for action, some avenues of support, and ways to structure this so that can help work in your life in real time, not just in a fantasy world, and encouraging you to be compassionate and forgiving for ourselves. Look, I fall off the wagon all the time, but the mark of a leader, well, once anyway, but in a while, maybe every day. but the important thing is not that whether I fall off or the important thing is I get back on.
Yeah.
See, I mean, there was a very famous boxer who said, look, it's not the number of times you get knocked down, it's the number of times you get back up. That's the mark of success in a leader. And that's what builds this character. And I just want to encourage all of us to take this on for ourselves, because one of the important things that Christa mentioned earlier may have just slipped by, but that when we stand inspired, when we stand in success, when we stand in abundance, we're an inspiration for all those around us, whether we're aware of it or not. And then the gift keeps giving. Yeah. It becomes, again, even in a bigger sense, a virtuous cycle, a cycle of abundance and transformation in the world, both on an individual level and on a community level, and ultimately on a world level. So I want to thank you for your attention, and hope that you got some value out of this, and wish you all the success that you deserve. So thank you.